Good morning. Good morning. I'm Bob Renjilian, minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County. I welcome you to this congregation, whether you're here for the first time or the thousandth time. We are glad you are here with us. And I welcome you on this particularly rainy day. I am so proud of you for accepting the challenges of coming out in a rainstorm without melting, and for finding a parking spot even if there are no lines in the lot. So very good. Challenges accepted and overcome. Thank you. I'm going to wear a mask a lot today, and I was hiding in my office because I have itchy eyes and sneezes, and I think, okay, well, that's got to be tree pollen. But what if it isn't? So I figured, all right, I'm going to be safe for all of you and do this and stay away from Vanessa and not sing with the choir and all of those things, and we'll just go hide again during coffee hour too. So we'll do that. But I'm glad you're here today. We have some announcements this morning, but first I would like to start with the recognition of the Rose, the Loving Hearts Helping Hands group. And Leslie, would you come forward to speak on that? Now, I'll hold this near you.
Yes, I usually have a pretty good voice.
Yeah.
Loving Hearts is bringing the rose today for Pam Zapata, who died this week, I believe. And she will be a big loss to us and to the community in general. She's been an amazing person involved in many good places. So we will miss her.
And Alan, my heart goes out to you and all the family as well. For other announcements, today at 4 o'clock there is an ecumenical Earth Day service. Lutherans pulled this together along with Episcopalians, Methodists, and Unitarian Universalists. And so our sound crew will be setting up. If it's like this, all drippy outside, we will not be in the amphitheater. We'll be in the Rogau room. So we had that backup plan in place. And I'll be speaking as well as representatives from the other religions that I mentioned out loud, something of the environmental care ministries, creation care ministries of the various churches, feeling like, the Unitarian Universalists did Thanksgiving really well. Can we do Earth Day as an ecumenical thing? And so I'm really glad. Thank you all for considering coming at 4 o'clock back to the area and taking part in that. We also have some slides I'll put up on the screen. I think there's one for Beyond the Binary, which is to learn more about transgender or non-binary folk, and for those folks and allies, a conference. It's been sponsored year after year live up in upstate New York, but Syracuse area, but this is being broadcast and offered to many. The deadline was officially yesterday, but I've been told I know how to get a secret code. If you still want to register today, I can make that happen. If you let me know, I'll make sure we get the secret code to you to do that. We also have on May 4th a membership event. And we've got 5, 6, 7 maybe people who are signed up at this point, and we have room for more. 9 to noon, come a little bit early, stay after noon for sharing a lunch together. We will do it mostly in the Yellow House because of cleanup after the auction. So some in here, some in the Yellow House. So we'll do what we can do to make sure everything in this busy congregation goes on all at once. What was the last slide? Where's that? Oh, yes. Has nothing Nothing to do whatsoever with church, but you know I've brought my barbershop buddies to come and sing for you, and our barbershop chorus was working very, very, very hard, and we are now district champions and have been selected to go on to internationals next year. So we're very excited about all that we did with that. Thank you for allowing that little bit of just, yeah, I have to tell somebody. Yeah. I invite Vicki Held forward to come and talk about the auction. Vicki, why don't you go on up there so you have a good mic and visibility.
Good morning. So I'm Vicki Held, and on behalf of the auction team, we want to invite you and encourage you to tell all your friends and neighbors to come to the opening night of our auction, which is this Friday from 5 to 7. It's here in the church. You don't have to sign up in advance, just show up. It's a lot of fun. So you might know why we have an auction. Besides our pledges and our donations and the plate, it raises the most money for our mission. So it is a fundraiser, but it's also a fun raiser. So we will have lots of food, drink. We have now over 100 items to bid on, and we have about 13 events to bid on. And so it's an online auction. We use a fundraising platform for nonprofits called Better World. They administer everything that happens in the auction, so it is online. And the online auction starts right at 5 o'clock on Friday, and it runs for 1 week and will end at 5 o'clock the next Friday. And during that time, you can bid. You do have to be registered to bid. If you've ever participated in an auction before, anything from Better World, you don't have to do anything again. Unless you want to change the credit card you have on file. You do have to have a credit card on file to bid. If you haven't bid, we have a handout outside on the table, tells you exactly step by step how to bid. We're out there. I've already had a person this morning, and we'll be here Friday night if you haven't been. If you don't have a smartphone, it doesn't matter. You can register at your home computer and come to the opening, see everything, and then go home and bid using your own personal computer. So you don't have to have a smartphone. I just want to tell you just a little to get your excitement going. We have 13 events that have been donated by our members that you buy a ticket for, and they're limited seats. We have the repeat of an Irish pub night. We have an Armenian dinner, a Peruvian dinner, a Spanish tapas dinner, a Mardi Gras party, 2 5-course wine pairing dinners, an appetizers and dessert dinner, get-together, a guided hike, a trip to the Arboretum, a Christmas wreath making, and we also yesterday got a moss walk from Betty Jones, and she's going to take us out to her property, and she'll teach you everything about mosses. And we got another meditation event this morning that we haven't processed yet and put up, but could be 25 people for that. So all of this is very exciting. So ask us out there to help you. If you need help, tell your friends. It'll be on social media because we can sell out into the community. But we hope to raise a lot of money and have a lot of fun. So hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki, and everybody's putting so much effort into pulling that fun event off. Thank you. We have, I see several notes for the candles this morning. I will read from those as Vanessa lights the candles of our joys and sorrows. I would like to start with a candle for John Austin, who has COVID, and somebody appended to my note, and multiple other health problems that are not life-threatening, but which are challenging. This candle is from Jill, who says, I miss sassy, hilarious, is that Roger Hoagland, so much happy birthday in heaven, or wherever you may be, you left us too soon. Thank you, Jill. We have from Nancy Richards a request that we please pray for her niece, Kathy, who will have surgery for skin cancer this week. And an anonymous note or warm thoughts for Jean Rowe and family. Let's have a candle lit for those things that might be shared later in coffee hour, held in the hearts of the people here, or those things that are held in the hearts of those who are online. Whether you type it into the chat box or not, we have that candle glowing to represent the fact that this is a place where we do, in fact, weave the fabric of community and the sharing of our joys and our sorrows. Thank you all. And now I invite you to turn to one another in worthy recognition of one another this morning.
Good morning, and allergies have struck me also. And these are pretty definitely allergies because I've had the same symptoms for 10 years. But I don't want to be coughing on you, so I'm going to wear the mask a majority of the time today. Our opening words this morning are from the Reverend Evan Carville Zemer, who is the developmental lead for the New England district of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and I guess I'm just going to wear an extra earring. If we lived in another climate, our souls might speak other languages. We might speak oasis or permafrost or dry season or monsoon. But our souls speak spring. Our souls speak green leaves pushing through last year's leaves. Our souls speak flower buds stretching to sun. Our souls speak mud puddle and nest building, damp earth and worm castings, tiny green leaves and frog choruses. We speak spring because spring sings in us. We gather to nurture our faith in our own growing, our own courage to push through, our own blossoming beauty, our own small part in the spring of this world. Come, let us worship together. And I'm sorry, maybe that was supposed to be unison and I didn't realize it. My apologies, but you could read at least. You could see all my mistakes. Let us rise as you're willing and able, or remain seated, and sing our opening hymn, number 1073, The Earth is Our Mother. It's a chant.
The earth is our mother.
This one I'm pretty sure is a unison reading. We now move more deeply into our worship service by lighting our chalice, which is, of course, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And we read together the words of Mark Causey. We light this chalice, spark of the original fire of creation, to remind us that we all on this planet, the furred, the feathered, the finned, and the scaled, along with us featherless bipeds, we are all made of the same star stuff and all share a common destiny. We all share the same hopes of a life free from harm and suffering, and the same aspirations of happiness, love, and flourishing, being able to express our own unique and capacities as best we may. We are just that many diverse perspectives from which the whole is seen and experienced. We are inextricably intertwined, interconnected, and interdependent, and it is good. I call forth Kevin Lausch now for our Wisdom for All Ages.
Good morning. Well, for this month, our theme is interconnectedness, and of course, we are here at Earth Day also. And so our book for today is called Creek Finding. It's a true story written by Jacqueline Briggs Martin, illustrated by Claudia McGahee. So let's get our pointer ready here. What's neat about this is a true story about a man who became a farmer named Mike Osterholm. He actually was a very well-known, I think he's an epidemiologist with many books to his name, and he decided in his retirement to go back to where he came from and to start farming the land. Creek finding. The creek finding machine. An excavator is a machine that chomps dirt. Excavators dig holes for basements, trenches for water pipes, and paths for roads. Sometimes excavators help find lost creeks. But how did they do that? How does a creek get lost, especially a creek that started long ago with a spring that burbled out of the ground and tumbled across a prairie valley? The creek wasn't just water. Insects whirled in and around the creek. Brook trouts grew fat in the creek, lunching on insects. Frogs chirped in the creek, ready for their buggy share. Birds watched at the streamside, hungry for bugs, fish, and frogs. Well, the creek did not lose itself. A farmer used a bulldozer to stuff the creek full of dirt so he'd have more room to grow corn. No water, no bugs, no frogs, no birds, no brook trout. The lost creek was quiet for quite a while under the sun. Sorry, I did not advance. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. There we go. Trout in a cornfield. Years later, a man named Mike bought that field and hillside. He went in to grow a prairie where there was an old cornfield. To partner with the sun and the soil, grow tall grasses and flowers, as it had been before. One day, as Mike was out working, a neighbor came by and said that long ago he had caught a brook trout right in that spot. A brook trout in a cornfield? No way. Partnering with the creek. Mike knew that there must have been a creek on that prairie, and he wanted to find that creek, a place for brook trout and birds and bugs and frogs. He said he would call it Brook Creek. Others laughed and said Mike's plan was foolishness. Lost is lost. But someone gave him an old photograph, and he marked the creek's path, and then he called his friends who owned the big machines. For 5 days, a bulldozer scraped, excavator bit into the ground, carved holes, dug curves and runs, and tamped rocks on the creek bottom. The excavator found the old stream, but would the water fill the path? Mike said the water remembered, and it seeped from the sides. It raced down the ripples and runs. It burbled into the holes, filled the creek. But a creek isn't just water. It's plants and rocks and bugs and fish and birds. Mike and his friend tucked cordgrass and other green shoots into the creek banks. 3 summers grasses grew. When the creek bed needed more rocks, Mike had a problem. Heavy trucks crossing the creek would press deep ruts into the ground and kill new prairie plants. How would he get more rocks into the creek? He waited until winter when the ground was frozen hard. Cement trucks lubbered across the prairie and emptied their rocks into the creek and left no ruts. Rocks settled in and the plants grew, insects flew in, whirled and buzzed, and laid eggs in the water and on the grasses. And after 2 more years, small fish called sculpin swam into the creek. And that was the good news. Sculpin survive only in clean, fresh water, the same kind of water that brook trout would need. Time for the trout. And a pickup truck carried the tub that held the trout. Mike and his friend laughed in the morning air, lugged and dumped buckets of finger-sized fish. Perhaps the brook creek laughed too, tickled by the trout. And the water was right. The food was right. Trout snapped up bugs and grew for 2 more summers. In the second fall, the rocks provided perfect places for the fish to lay eggs. And winter came. Would the eggs survive snowstorms, ice storms, and cold wind? Then, one late winter morning, fish squiggles, no bigger than a thumbnail, squiggles grew into fat trout who laid eggs in turn to hatch more generations at home in Brook Creek. Maybe a chuckle, maybe a thanks. And if you went to the creek with Mike, you'd see the water. But a creek isn't just water. You'd see the brook trout and the sculpin. You'd hear the outside orchestra of heron and snipe, bluebirds, yellow-throated warblers, frogs returned home, and insects, thousands and thousands of the insects. You'd hear the water ripple and burble, maybe a chuckle, maybe a thanks, to Mike and the big machines that found the creek. So let's remember on this Earth Day, there are ways we can help the earth and return it to the way it is supposed to be, and we are with it. And now Jack will bring up our children's chalice candle, and we'll sing them out.
We're lucky. We're lucky. We are blessed. We have experienced a great amount of benefit from having this place exist in our lives, having one another, having shelter, shelter in the storms of religious outpourings in the world which do not match what fits for us, or from what we would like to have the open space in which we could pick and choose and find the path that works for us. It doesn't come from luck alone. It comes from our dedication of time and talent and treasure and trust. And this is the time in the service in which we give generously to this congregation, whatever is put into the basket, and whatever is put into the envelope to our charity of the month, the Children's Place, we also give. We will now gratefully receive the morning offering. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Gypsy. What is given in love, we receive with great joy. Thank you. I invite you to enter into a time of centering yourself, stretching yourself out beyond your own ego into what helps nurture and feed us, tied in with the environment around us and all on earth and above. Spirit of love and life, we who are gathered here this morning appreciate the greening of the world around us. Remind us in our hearts and our thoughts that even as the world is transforming itself, we may be reactive. in our hearts leaping, in our noses running, in whatever ways, let us be totally accepting of the wonder and the joy of this earth, all beings, and the entire environment of which we are in part. Spirit of love and life, this being a Earth Day weekend, we turn our attention especially to the ways in which we as human beings have worked with values that were not in keeping and harmony with all of nature. Not so that we might be ashamed. No, Spirit of love and life, guide our hearts so that we might then turn ourselves to reconnect with a path that goes better through our fields and forests, better through the ways in which we have clean air, and we all share in the resources that are available to us. We also reach out this morning to those for whom we have candles glowing. Our warm thoughts for Jean Rowe and her family. Our prayers for Nancy Richards' niece, Kathy, who's getting surgery for skin cancer. To John Austin, with COVID and other ailments, who could not be with us this morning. For Roger Hoagland, in memory on his birthday, though he is gone. And our hearts go out to Jill and others. May we remember that we are connected to one another. May we never feel totally alone or independent, but instead interdependent. O Spirit of love and life, these, the prayers of our hearts and the thoughts of our minds, we hold now in the silence. In the names of all those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind, we say, Amen. Blessed be.
Bright morning star.
Thank you, choir. And Janice, thank you for stepping in last moment as we had only heard yesterday about John not being able to be here. Thanks so much. The reading this morning is from Mary Oliver's morning poem. It's in our hymn book, number 536, but I'll be reading it aloud to you. Every morning the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the high branches, and the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is in your nature to be happy, you will swim away along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it's all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still somewhere deep within you a beast, shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly every morning. Whether or not you have ever dared to be happy, whether or not you have ever dared to pray. Topic this morning in our interdependence theme is one that touches on religion and its role with our understanding of our interdependent web of all existence and nature. I've entitled it, The Scopes Trial, Dust Bowl, Climate Change, Oh My. And I'll touch on each of these just briefly, not so that you have a complete understanding of everything, but so that you can see something of the ebb and flow and patterns of religion, science, social causes, and our understanding of what it is to be a human ethically in our environment. Some of you may remember the Scopes monkey trial, put it in air quotes here. Probably none of you remember hearing it on the radio in 1925. So May of 1925 will be the 100th anniversary is coming up this May of next year. So this is the 99th year since the Scopes trial. And next year, 2025, will be the 100th. It did not settle anything, but it caused a great stir and got a lot of publicity. The facts behind it was that the trial was supposed to be about challenging a newly passed Tennessee state law against teaching evolution, and I'm getting this from pbs.org, against teaching evolution or any other theory denying a biblical account of the creation of humanity. So it was a collision, as PBS put it, between traditional views and values with more modern ones. It was a time of evangelicalism and the fight against forces, including jazz, sexual permissiveness, and racy Hollywood movies that was a part of what was going on in culture at the time. John Scopes was 24 years old. He taught in the public high school in Dayton, Tennessee, and is said to have included evolution in his curriculum. The thing is, if you read a little deeper, you find out that John Scopes was the substitute. He couldn't actually remember if he taught evolution or not, but he said that if they could prove that he taught it, he would be glad to stand as defendant, that this case might go forward. He helped coach his students to testify that he had indeed talked about evolution. And there's enough evidence that they were using a 2014 textbook that was required in the Tennessee schools, which talked about evolution and, sadly, eugenics as well. Not the greatest textbook, but was as pointed out is that the school teachers in Tennessee were required to teach from that textbook. And the law, the Butler Law that had just been passed saying that they couldn't teach evolution, meant that by requiring them to teach from the textbook, they were immediately doing something illegal. The ACLU picked up the case and ran with it. Clarence Darrow was defending Scopes, and the famous William Jennings Bryan, Christian pacifist, former candidate for the U.S. presidency, took on the case, it says here, because he believed that evolutionary theory led to dangerous social movements. Why in Dayton, Tennessee? Because the major industrialists of the city felt like the city needed more publicity. And that if they could have the case to try this new law, it would bring flocks of people to Dayton, Tennessee, and everyone everywhere would learn of this town. And they were right. There were so many people who came, they had to hold the trial outdoors. It was hot and sweltering in the courthouse as well, so outdoors was a better environment. Scopes' trial proceeded. He was convicted. He was fined $100, which, let me see here, I think I have it written down. That's equivalent to $1,700 today, that $100 fine at the time, in the 1920s. But the verdict was then overturned on a technicality. But the trial served its purpose. It got lots of publicity for Dayton, Tennessee. Not necessarily what they wanted, but they got it. And it set back the teaching of evolution in schools until through the 1960s. Why? Why was it so religiously important that evolution be fought? There were plenty of religious groups which had decided that it was okay to have evolution and just understand that we still had an original creator and that evolution was part of the plan and the work. It was okay to kind of say, well, the world was created in 6 days, and maybe those 6 days back in the time, just like the lifespan of early biblical characters, is kind of squishy in our understanding. And 6 days for God may have been, in fact, 5,000 years or something like that. There were people who were willing to be flexible. There were others who were not flexible at all. And if you think back to that era, the other religious group that was pushing very hard in society for reform were those like my great-grandmother, who were card-carrying members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, who had lifted up a biblical passage that said, "You shall not get drunk on wine," and wished to make that law across the nation. That was a reform movement to help in a society in which there were people who were starving because their major breadwinners would stop at the pubs on the way home and spend their hard-earned wages. Or the children would go and buy buckets of beer to walk back home. Fitting in the religious ideas of some pockets of our society of saying evolution is just as bad as jazz. for us. It's an erosion of our values. We need to get back to the fundamentals of the Bible and Christianity. Because if we don't do that, the world will be falling apart. Now, the 1920s was also known as the Roaring Twenties. There was a whole lot of stuff that was going on that had broken the bounds of the Victorian era that had occurred before. The generations born into the Victorian era were not able to say the word pregnancy out loud, or other things that might have been, well, we just don't talk about it. There were ways in which society had been broken open in the aftermath of the First World War, with the First World War song saying something like, how are we going to keep them down on the farm, Ma, if they've seen Gay Paris? The whole idea that small town farming communities now had to compete with an awareness of the world and the ways that things had always been done for generations were being questioned by the youth. And there was some way we had to bring society back into some semblance of what people understood was balance. And evolution was just one of those tricky things that was undermining the world. Probably didn't help at all that Clarence Darrow was pretty much agnostic and unreligious. So it was played up as a religious, backwards attitude versus an enlightened, modern, liberal, atheist attitude. It didn't help things over the years for that to be understood. But it was, as I prepared this service, something that was important in understanding what brings us to where we are now. The post-World War I era, in the 20s, there were economic crashes, but nowhere near as what happened at the very end with the Depression. Farmers actually were doing pretty well. They had high demand. They had generally good enough weather so that if you were a farmer, you and your family were doing well. Until what was called the Dust Bowl of the 30s. Now, it may be that you learned about the Dust Bowl from textbooks which talked about how using the kinds of plows that were used in the East, in Kansas or Oklahoma or Texas or in those areas that had a different environment, that meant that when drought came, that the land was too exposed and would, in fact, be whipped up into dust storms that went everywhere. Different religions were handling the news of this in different ways, whereas in the 20s, it was thought that God had shown God's providence to the farmers in that region. And their profits and their growth were an example of God's grace. And then the Dust Bowl came. And Jesse Clyde Fisher, the Methodist superintendent for the liberal Kansas district in the mid-1930s, told fellow Methodists that he felt that federal support was critical in the region where dust storms, dust pneumonia, and crop failures devastated communities. I'm quoting here from a church history research article from 1923, The Dust Bowl, the Depression, and American Protestant Response to Environmental Devastation by Randall J. Stevens of the University of Oslo, Norway. He was quoting this United Methodist General Superintendent. The superintendent said schools could not hold classes in southwest Kansas and that our churches barely existed, he reported. Dust covered up and piled up to 3 feet high. Houses had to be sealed to keep out the fine particles, and in one place, Fisher recalled, the ceiling of the new church sagged badly when a few people came in for the morning service, and before the men could get at it, it had burst through and the dust was pouring down. 3 tons were taken out. Fisher also reported that the mortality rate was going up in his region, and that one pastor conducted 10 funerals in 11 days. He concluded that our science and our present technology are so tinctured with orthodox Christian arrogance towards nature that no solution for our ecological crisis can be expected from them alone. Now, I have it as quoted to him, but that may also have been from Lynn White, who published 30 years later the historical roots of our ecological crisis in the 1960s, ushering in something of the ecological movements that we were in the 70s. It was thought that these Christian ideas that have been antithetical to environmentalism should instead inspire us to a greener, more ecological path. So there were those from some of the more liberal religions willing to incorporate scientific learning, just as they did before the Scopes trial about evolution. They were willing to incorporate the ideas and have better farming techniques and understand irrigation better and work on things so it would not cause this crisis ever again. It was Christians like that who said, we must step forth to take care of the earth. We are charged to take care of creation. And indeed, the ministries in the area congregations from our Protestant brothers and sisters and others here in Brevard talk about their creation care ministries. But that there were those who also felt like, no, we are to have dominion over the earth, and we are to help the poor. And the best way to help the poor is to exploit every resource that God has given us, to use up every resource that's there until the final coming of Christ, in which we have done our best to convert each and every person to Christianity that they might be saved. At that point, the earth is toast. It's used up. The only people left will be the left behinds. And our biblical understanding of helping the poor and helping everyone come to our evangelical fundamentalist position is that we only have to have the earth last long enough to the rapture. That's it. There's not going to be enough oil left, then let's usher in the rapture now. This is where I come to the modern era, where we have the same resistance to an interpretation that is informed by science, clashing with religious attitudes which say, but the Bible teaches us something entirely different. And in fact, they predicted what just happened this morning. They were so afraid, these Christian fundamentalists, that the turn to environmentalism was rampant paganism, that we would be singing about Mother Earth in our churches. And we would have lost it in our fight for having the biblically based way. Guilty as charged. And they pointed out that what was going on in retrieving wisdom and knowledge from Native American traditions, the pagan traditions, nature-based religious ideas, they were pointing out this is just not the way we teach religion. And we will lose. We will lose if this is allowed to continue. Can you understand the desperation then among those who would not set foot in this room to see what we just read on the screen? Can you understand the desperation of those who thought that they had been blessed by God's providence and now plagues were upon them, that their own churches were crushed, literally crushed under tons of dust, let alone locust plagues or other things? That the end times might be coming and they hadn't converted everyone. And that in fact, the end times might still be soon upon us. And these nasty liberals are talking about earth and bringing us to Native American understandings. Hadn't we expelled the savages to make room for Christians? What are we doing here in America? When we talk about our interdependence with one another, we have to understand that the values that we hold clash at its root with the idea that the only interdependence is a dependence on a God, a Jesus, and a Bible. That we are all members of a body. The interpretation seemingly saying we do not have to pay attention to every blade of grass. We do not have to worry about covering over an entire stream because we want to feed the world, that we might continue to reach the poor and bring them to our fundamentalist ideals. It's tricky. It's a lot more than can fit into one sermon, but I hope you understand that even as we celebrate, as we did this morning, the chance to worship freely with one another in an understanding of interconnectedness is such a threat, to those who say you've got the wrong tactic. And those Unitarians are just as bad as jazz and evolution, and we will all suffer for it. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. We have as a closing hymn the one that we tried out a couple weeks ago and which we have suggested to be sung at the Earth Day celebration this afternoon. It's number 207, Earth Was Given as a Garden. The words will be on the screen. As closing, I invite you to read this closing pledge of allegiance to the earth. I pledge allegiance to the earth on which I stand, and to the environment of which I am a part, one planet in a process, with soil, water, and air like one body, indivisible, with resources to be cherished and protected by all. Our chalice light is going out, but our religious light continues. May you carry it forth into this week with you, and then come back again in joy. Blessings on all.